This is the story of the Honda CRX. Honda sold its first car in the US more than 50 years ago with the Honda N600. The N600 only stuck around in the US for a few years, but it opened up the floodgates for Honda in the US and helped them launch successful vehicles like the Honda Civic and the Honda Accord. It also cleared the way for cars like the Honda CRX, which was eventually released a little more than a decade after the N600 first arrived in the US. The Honda CRX was one of the most popular cars produced by Honda during its initial release into the North American market. Way back in 1980, Honda released the Honda Ballade in Japan. It got its name from the French word for ballad and was meant to be a high-end version of the Honda Civic, which was first released in 1979. The Honda Ballade was released at the same exact time as the Honda Vigor, which was considered to be the high-end version of the Honda Accord that was first released in 1976. Shortly after releasing the Honda Ballade in 1980, Honda decided to rework some elements of the car and bring it to the US. They created the Honda CRX specifically for the North American market and released it for the first time in 1983 as the 1984 Honda CRX. There's been a lot of debate over the years as far as what the CRX stands for, with Civic Renaissance Experimental being one of the most widely accepted definitions for the CRX acronym. Just like a lot of the other vehicles that Honda was producing at the time, the original Honda CRX was a compact car. More specifically, it was marketed as a Kammback, which is a term that refers to a car with a rear that slopes downward and has a flat vertical surface on the back of it. The Honda CRX had just 3 doors, and it was on the smaller side in the interior with a 2+2 seating arrangement that featured just enough room for a driver and a passenger in the front and kids or the occasional adult passengers in the back. This allowed for Honda to use a very tight and compact design when putting the CRX together. The original Honda CRX was released at a time when the 1973 oil crisis was still fresh on a lot of people's minds. The oil crisis had caused a gas shortage throughout many parts of the US, and it had forced people to rethink the fuel efficiency of their vehicles for the first time. The Honda CRX and a lot of other compact cars like it offered a fuel efficiency that people just couldn't find in many larger vehicles. Honda claimed the CRX could get anywhere from 50 to 70 miles per gallon, depending on the driving conditions. This is one of the reasons why about 50,000 people bought the 1984 Honda CRX. It's also why sales skyrocketed to almost 60,000 in 1985, and then up over the 65,000 mark in 1986 before coming back down to earth a little bit in the years that followed. But the fuel efficiency of the Honda CRX isn't the only reason why many Americans fell in love with the car. They also loved the performance that it offered, thanks to the aluminum 1.3-liter CVCC engines, economy model, and aluminum 1.5-liter 4-cylinder engine sports model tucked inside of it. And they appreciated incredible handling that it provided as well. It was clear that Honda had a huge hit on its hands, almost from the beginning. Although it was pretty obvious that Honda had come up with a winning formula for success when it designed the original Honda CRX, the company continued to push the boundaries in subsequent years to improve upon the 1984 CRX. In 1985, for example, they did away with the CRX economy model and replaced it with an HF high fuel model that had a 1.5-liter engine in it that was capable of providing people with even better fuel efficiency. They also released the SI model, sports injected, that had a very powerful 1.5-liter SOHC PGM-FI engine, as well as technology advanced features like power sunroof, remote interior mirrors, and more. Honda incorporated a variety of other changes into the Honda CRX over time. Some of the most notable changes include the aerodynamic headlights that were worked into the design of the 1986 Honda CRX, the center console featuring cassette tape storage that was placed inside of the 1986 Honda CRX, the updated chassis that was used to build the 1988 Honda CRX, which officially jump-started the second generation of the CRX. But it's worth noting that Honda didn't tinker with the CRX too much throughout the years. They stuck with what they had for the most part and used this consistency to their advantage. It established the Honda CRX as one of the most fuel-efficient cars on the road and allowed people to gain an appreciation for what the CRX brought to the table with regards to performance. It wasn't just the general public that fell in love with the Honda CRX over and over again throughout the 1980s and the early 1990s. The people who knew cars best also showed a lot of love for the Honda CRX by giving it a series of awards over the years. It all started in 1984 when Motor Trend gave it its Import Car of the Year award to the Honda CRX. That would be just the first award of many that the Honda CRX would collect. Here's some of the other awards that it won. It earned a spot on the Car and Driver 10 Best list in 1985. It landed on the Road and Track 10 Best Cars of All Time list in 1988. It won the Motor Trend Import Car of the Year award again in 1990. The Honda CRX also made an appearance on the TV show Fight Back with David Horowitz after Honda claimed the car could get between 50 and 60 miles per gallon fuel economy under normal driving conditions. Horowitz often used the show to refute claims made by companies. But when it came to the Honda CRX, he actually found that Honda might have been underselling the fuel efficiency of the CRX since he was able to get about 65 miles per gallon with it. Between 1984 and 1991, there were almost 400,000 Honda CRX models sold throughout the U.S. As a result, there were quite a few CRX models out on the road throughout the 1990s, and even into the 2000s. There aren't very many of them out on the road anymore. Since Honda stopped producing the CRX almost 30 years ago, it shouldn't come as a huge shock to hear that the CRX has become increasingly rare. The Honda CRX has actually become so rare that when one shows up at a car show unexpectedly, it often steals the spotlight. Even though the CRX isn't the biggest or flashiest car around, the fact that there are still some out there in decent shape says a lot about the car. People tend to stop and turn their heads when they see one from the 1980s that's still ticking. At the height of its popularity, the Honda CRX was in such high demand that people had to be careful about where they parked their cars. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, many car thieves specifically targeted those who drove the Honda CRX. At the start of the 1990s, sales for the Honda CRX started to slump, which eventually led to Honda going in another direction. They did away with the CRX in 1992 and replaced it with the Honda Del Sol. Some people still consider the Del Sol to be a CRX at heart, and even referred to it as a third-generation CRX. But it slowly morphed into a much different kind of car than the CRX, until it too was discontinued in 1998. And that's the story behind the Honda CRX. Leave us your comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Don't forget to click that bell to be notified of our new videos. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.